Today I want to go over a really important and very popular topic that I see covered a ton online and in sales trainings, but I don't see it covered the right way, and that's overcoming objections. There are a ton of different objections. I've probably heard them all, but a quick example would be if someone said, hey, I need to talk to X person or X team before I can make a decision and move forward, or I need some time to think it over. These are two really common ones, so we're going to go over those today. The issue that I've seen with training that exists now is that they teach overcoming objections in a kind of a linear one-size-fits-all model. Objections come in all flavors and they come throughout all stages of a selling process. But simply being trained on an objection one way is not going to work for you or the modern buyer. You need to be trained on that specific objection at that specific time or stage in the process and to that specific person or team. Objections are going to happen. They happen pretty often and you need to be prepared for them in your process. But not all objections are there to derail your deal, and some are just part of the natural selling process. Some objections are simply as a checkpoint or something that your buyer needs to do for procurement in order to progress the deal through. Where I see people failing is that they're not prepared for the objection or when the objection happens. My process is built around uncovering objections throughout the entire sales cycle so that nothing surprises you and you're ready for them when they come up. In fact, you're probably already going to know them before the person says it. If you're doing your job correctly, then most of these objections have most likely already surfaced because you've been leading the buyer or the buyers down that sales process, down that sales cycle. A big part of my training is going through and illustrating and role-playing different scenarios with these objections because remember, not all of these are the same. And let's remember, these objections are going to be different. You might get the same objection like, I need some time to think it over. But the way you field that and the way you respond to that objection will be really different if you were, let's say, selling a large product or service to a big corporation versus if you were selling something to a single household. But since we're here, let's go over a few ways that you could overcome some of these common objections. We'll start with the I need to think it over objection. So one way you could respond to this would be, okay, no problem. I understand it's an important decision and I want to make sure it makes sense for you. Has there been anything I haven't covered or questions you're still thinking through? So what that does is it keeps the conversation going. It shows the buyer you're not being pushy, you're aligning with them, and you want to continue being a resource. So you're saying, hey, what have I not covered, right? And that's going to help get more information because the buyer will then keep talking and you'll get more information. You'll uncover more about their process and what's holding them back. Another way that you could respond to this would be, that sounds good. When should we circle up? Looking at my calendar, I can regroup next week at so-and-so time. Also, in the meantime, what information can I send over or questions can I answer? Again, what you're doing is you're not being invasive. You're being a trusted consultant. You're asking what you can do to help them during that process. You're also starting to put just a little bit of pressure, but in the right way, and uncovering how long they will need. That way you can be ready to follow up and help them. If you just leave it open-ended of, yeah, I'll call you back, then you don't really know when to do that. So you want to make sure you have next steps. By saying, hey, can we connect next week? They might say yes, or they might say, hey, I'm on vacation. That allows you to, one, keep the conversation going, and two, understand exactly what the next steps are going to be. Remember, with any of these, we want to rewire our brains to not be a pushy, sleazy salesperson. We want to be that consultant or that resource that they trust. Pushing back constantly on trying to overcome objections is where you're going to lead to the most roadblocks because that creates the friction, and you don't want that. People are not going to buy the first time. Yeah, sure, every now and then they might if it's a low ticket item, but you have to play to your sales process. That has to be well defined. You have to know that objections will happen, and instead of trying to push back and apply pressure and say, well, let's try to close this now, be okay with these objections and know how to handle them. Lastly, a way to overcome this common objection would be something like, got it, no worries. I know that fixing blank or, doing this, whatever, just insert that there, is important to you. And I want to make sure you have all the information you need to make the decision. I think it's a great fit. So let's talk about what next step should be. So what that does, again, keeps the conversation going and helps you both align. You'll start to uncover more in that conversation if you are talking about let's align on next steps. And those next steps could be, hey, what information do you need? When should we follow up? Who do we need to involve in the process? So the other objection that you're most likely going to get pretty often as a salesperson is I need to talk to this person or this team before I can make a decision. Now let me give you a quick example of what not to do. So one weekend there was a knock at my door, and this really happened. It was a landscaping company. They were coming by to offer their services for the seasonal lawn treatments and other things that they do. Now I was actually pretty interested, but my wife and I, we make those decisions jointly. And when I told him that, his response was, I'm not joking, he said, do you always let your wife make decisions for you? Well, needless to say, that conversation ended super fast because I'm not going to do this without my wife's approval, without her knowing what's happening. I was interested at the time and likely would have signed up, but that response right there turned me off entirely and the conversation was over. So let's go over some ways that you can not make a mistake like that. So way number one is, hey, good idea. What do you think will be the most important to them so I can make sure you have that information? And what that does is shows that you're on their side. You're an ally and you want them to look good going into that conversation. Another response could be, hey, sounds good. Do you think it'll be helpful to schedule a call and include them on it so we can all align? And you're asking to continue to be that resource, but if they say yes, like I need to talk to finance, if you offer to create another call or schedule another meeting and include them in it, maybe they'll be receptive to that because you're going to help do some of that selling. It's not going to be all on them. We learn a lot that there's multiple people in a decision process. The person you're talking to is likely not the one making the sole decision and will need to bring in other people. Again, if you're doing your job effectively, you're going to know this, and it's a huge part of my training process, helping you figure out how to uncover all of this in a natural way throughout. Another option I've used, which is super effective, would be something like this. Okay, no problem. Are you going to chat with, and then it's a blank, so you insert, someone's name or the team. Do you think that will happen this week? I know it's something you've been interested in, so let me know how I can help with that conversation when you have it. And this is really cool. This is a neat tactic because you're inserting at least a person or a team that you've uncovered throughout the process. So again, let's say it's finance, right? So are you gonna, do you have to talk to the finance team or do you have to talk to the CFO, right? If you're wrong, but you've done my selling process correctly, you have an org chart. You can guess. You can take an educated guess at who that might be. Hey, is that Jane Smith in finance, right? If you know that finance has to be involved in this decision, but you've got a good org chart because you've done your recon, you've done your research, and you bring that up, that person's either going to say, yep, that's the one, or yep, that's the team, or no, I actually have to talk with so-and-so. That uncovers a lot more information and either gives you more ammo for it, or it confirms that you know what you're doing. You've done your research and you've paid attention. So I hope this has been helpful. My goal is to rewire your brain, retrain you to stop thinking about objections as being this huge barrier, this barrier you can't overcome, this break in the deal cycle, and understand that they're just a natural part of the sales process. Overcoming objections helps you get better. It helps your client or your prospect feel more comfortable continuing with the deal, and it's something you need to be well versed in fielding. Remember though, again, it's not all the same flavor. You might hear the objection, the same one, 20 or 30 times a month, but the way you respond to it could vary with each of those cases. The way I teach is all about you controlling that flow of the call and the entire sales process, but doing it as a trusted consultant where you're going to be uncovering these throughout. They're not going to come as surprises for you, and you're going to have answers. In many cases, I've even created objections for my prospects. I know that sounds crazy, but if I am bringing up things they might not have thought of, we can tackle it together and not something that's weeks or months down the sales process that they think of, and that ultimately delays the deal. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to connecting and helping you more on your sales journey.